This video is brought to you by Midway USA. Support the channel by choosing Midway for your shooting and outdoor supplies.
Blood carvings on the handguard, and I must say, Josh, if Slate Black Industries comes out with a line of masculine colognes, you'd probably want to call it the Zastava M70AB2. But let's find out. 150?
All right, 150. Impact. Impact.
How was that one?
That was on the top right corner of the plate.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, this is good. A good start. Okay, 200. Impact. Bottom edge. Bottom edge. Impact. Perfect. Center chest.
All right, so I'm aiming on the left side of the target.
All right. 250. Impact up at the neckline.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, you evened him out.
Oh, was it low on that one?
No, it was on the other shoulder, right at the neckline.
Oh.
You basically, you gave him the little, the two pins right at the neck.
Okay, that's so it's going a little too high. I'm going a little too hard on it. So should I increase the power level on this one?
All the way to 1,000.
Okay.
Do it.
Thank you, Josh. That's very helpful.
All right, we're on at 300.
I'll put the power level at 3.
Okay, and what, base hold?
Base hold, yeah.
Ah, not enough power, my friend.
Oh, okay. I'll put it in the center then. All right.
Yeah. Impact shoulder, upper left. Impact.
Okay. So that was flat, basically chest plus just slightly higher.
We're on at 350. Impact, dead on, send another. Sailed that one. Cover maybe 6 inches, 8 inches high. Good windage. Same spot, high over his head.
Okay, I'll come down a little bit more then.
Impact.
All right. You ready?
Yeah, I'm there. 400. Yeah, that was over his head, 6 inches high. Good windage. Just underneath. Yeah, that's it. Just low. Impact.
Okay. Yeah, the next one I definitely need to go on to 4.
So basically on that, you had a 400 that you were trying to hold base, but it was going too high.
Yep.
And so you opted to go 300. We figured out where it was, and it was just basically completely covering the target, and that's where you could get your hits.
Correct. Yeah.
Nice.
So it's at that sweet spot. That's really annoying for using iron sights.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no real good way to do it, right?
Yeah, it's just right in between the two.
Okay.
But all right, so 450. I'll use a 400 meter sight. I'll aim dead on just to see where it is.
Oh, you're gonna hold dead on with it.
Yep.
Okay, cool. I'm there. Oh yeah, baby. Yeah, buddy.
Nice.
Good call on that. I was thinking base hold for some reason, maybe because of how high it was at 4, but clearly not.
All right, so 500. I'm gonna hold high though.
Okay, I'm on at 5.
So I'll hold at maybe like head level.
No, way short, way short. Half a target, too short.
All right, 500 then. For the audience at home, you obviously don't get the olfactory experience of shooting the surplus M70AB2. I am smelling as the rifle warms up. I am smelling the essence of cosmoline. Ready?
All right, 500. Wow, that went into outer space, my man.
Oh shoot! Sorry, I aimed high on that one. That was shooter error. If
Okay.
you're okay on scrubbing that one, absolutely, I aimed high on that one because my mind was still on 400.
All right.
So I'll aim at the base for this one.
Yeah, it's probably a base and then some. Okay, elevation's there. That was just off the right edge. Yep, dead center. Yep.
Nice. I was absolutely aiming off into the white.
Dude,
Out in the
I am
Narnia.
positive that those were 2 impacts,
Nice.
but I didn't see the target move at all.
So, I mean, I was pleasantly surprised, Josh, that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 25 rounds of a clear
Wow.
with the worst type of
Do me
stock
a
a
favor,
marksman
do me
could
a
ask
favor.
for.
Shoot one more. Shoot one more at the 500. I'm second guessing myself, and I would hate for us to get back into post production and for it to be off. Just shoot me a couple more at it. That was short. Just off the right. Just off the left. Yeah, all right. I mean, that was off the left too. I'm confident they were hits. I didn't see any splashes, and I saw what I thought was impacts on target.
Okay,
on your,
so they're in the zone though, right?
all these that you just shot.
Oh yeah, do one more, I want to show a feature of the rifle.
Okay, go ahead. It's off the left.
Okay, look at the bolt.
AK lock open.
It's a magazine. Yugo
AK
mags
lock
lock the
open.
bolt open. So, I mean, I'm still okay. Look, granted, after that, the shots didn't land exactly on target, but still, 25 round clear for the an underfolder Yugo Kalashnikov that smells like war crimes. I mean, I'm pleasantly surprised. I'm very pleasantly surprised with this thing. I absolutely strategically timed it to be shot while I was wearing the thickest coat that I would wear, though, for reasons of the not that it recoils a lot. Let's just say that the recoil impulse is slightly sharper. But a couple people I want to thank off the bat for this. Apex Gun Parks, they were some of the guys who actually sent us the kit to get this built out. And specifically why they were key on this is because I asked Josh over there if he could pick out a nice original barrel with blood carving Yugo kit, underfolder kit, to most accurately represent the 90s era, sort of the Bosnian conflict era Yugo that you would see in the streets. And this is it. The history behind this, I think, appeals to the nerds, the AK nerds who are like deeply entrenched to AK history more. The craftsmanship, I was showing Josh just off screen, the craftsmanship to some of the machine parts as a mass-produced item is actually fantastic compared to some of what you see nowadays. It doesn't fit a lot of what your average shooter would think of an AK. They don't think of a Yugo AK to begin with, but it certainly has a lot of interesting engineering, little Easter eggs sprinkled all over it. But as far as accuracy goes, I mean, that's pretty representative of many of the Kalashnikovs we've shot. Russian, Chinese.
Yeah, especially
Yugo.
as we've gotten more experienced and shot more of them over time, and been able to get even better with them. I mean, even the misses that you had on these, almost all of them were just figuring out the elevation of what's going on. Now, granted, it's a pretty calm day with respect to wind, but pretty much everything was just, there's a couple targets that make the sighting decisions a little bit tougher because you can't take an easy base hold and you can't take an easy dead hold or upper target hold. You had to either completely cover or go way under on your base hold. So, but it goes to show that the AK remains a very capable rifle.
Yeah. So absolutely wouldn't underestimate something like this, whether it looks like it just came out of some dude's basement 30 years after the conflict. But I feel like there's a lot more we certainly could cover in a warmer setting, though. For now, do you have anything to add, Josh?
Let's take you to the debrief.
We'll see you guys there.
Do you enjoy arguing with other viewers on the internet on which rifle performed better on practical accuracy? Well, we have a solution for you. Go to our Patreon page and scroll down. You'll find the practical accuracy scoreboard where we have ranked and compiled all the data of all the firearms we have tested on the practical accuracy course. Furthermore, it's already separated into the different categories, so you can go back to your argument as quickly as possible. And whether you decide to support us via Patreon, subscription, or just a normal viewer, we thank you. Oh, bonsoir. You must have caught me admiring these two beauties behind me. Of course, from Saint-Étienne. I hope you're enjoying the show so far. Shows like this, they're made possible by Slate Black Industries. But more importantly, it is made possible from the patrons of Patreon. That's true. This group of magnificent Madame et Messieurs, they support us financially, intellectually, but more importantly, emotionally. So today, I would like to invite you. Come, join us. Become one of us. Together, we can discover the small intricacies of firearms technology. But if you cannot, c'est pas problème. We understand. We would be just as happy to hear from you in the comment section below. But for now, allons-y. Let's get on with it.
Welcome back into the debrief for the most war crime of war crime guns, Henry. The Yugo M70. Fully tricked out with trench art. Genuine trench art.
And the smell, the stench of cosmoline.
Yes.
It's a psychological effect, you see. When you spray this into the trenches, you start spewing that chemical warfare out. And people could smell you coming around the corner. That is the point to this. But the Yugo, man, guys will smack talk the Yugo. Like, I think as far as AK collectors go, you go into Kalashnikovs with the longing for, the Russian, the 74, the beautiful wood on the Russian rifles, and then you progress into the Chinese ones, and then at one point you start looking at the Yugos and you realize it's interesting from the engineering perspective. But then when you look past the engineering perspective and you look at the application, it is hands down one of the most storied and terrifying applications of any firearm used. But we're talking about its core performance today, just on a static range, which many of these were not used the way we were showing today. And before we do get into that, though, I am going to start this by thanking guys over at Apex. They actually sent the kit over, and they helped me look for this kit in their warehouse, and they very patiently let us hold on to it for ever, because we had to get this built out by Zach over who works with Brandon Herrera.
How far do we let him go?
Well, if he dies, we'll have to get a real job.
And we had initially, because this is a children's receiver with Yugo markings, we had issues with some of the early dimensions of some of these early receivers that Zach also had to fix. However, in that process, Zach was able to bluing match receiver to the kit. So it looks absolutely stunning because it looks like the whole thing came as is.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely doesn't look like a kit gun.
Yeah. So the Yugo. I feel like I should be chain smoking as I get into this segment of history.
Yeah. Henry, why don't you just, for those who maybe aren't like hyper familiar with the different variants of Kalashnikovs, why don't you walk through some of the main differences between, say, this and like a standard AKM, if you could, and you can include in there some of the history on how and why those changes may have taken place.
So there's different ways of copying a firearm. Obviously, the Kalashnikov was the OG, the original gangster, the Mikhail Kalashnikov. That is the Papa Kalashnikov of where everything came from. And then you had both your licensed and your unlicensed copies, right? Your AKMs, which would be not the Type 3 Kalashnikov, but rather the stamped receiver, the most voluminous Kalashnikov out there. You've got your Wassers, which is a facility in Kujir set up by, with the assistance of the Russians. You have the Egyptians with their Mahdis that are also licensed copies of the AKM. And then you have your unlicensed copies of the AKM that had a fair bit of imagination thrown to it. You will enjoy hearing, you will find it hilarious in this point that the Chinese Type 56 technically is not an unlicensed copy, because there was an actual data transfer from Russia to China in the year 55 and 56.
And what was it? It was after that where no Dragunov for you, right?
Dragunov for you. Literally right after the data transfer, the Sino-Soviet split happened, and there was no more update to the system. So essentially, if you look at the Chinese Type 56, it's an adaptation of the Type 3 Kalashnikov, which is a milled receiver Kalashnikov,
right,
into using a stamped receiver. And early Type 56s have milled receivers as well. In fact, if you look at the Polytech Legends, those are very similar to a Type 3, with some touches after all these years. But if you're talking about the Yugo, it is 100% Yugo pirated technology. None of this was a data transfer. But I've got to say, they got it right. Yeah. They got it so right. Like, even though this was an unlicensed ripoff of the Russian AKM, man, it does so well. I mean, this is one with the original barrel, too. So you can't even say that, oh, well, you have the assistance of a better American barrel made in modern days to make it shoot better. No, this is the original barrel to the M70AB2. Now, I have to emphasize that these things are so unique because the entire rifle was pirated. It was reverse engineered. This entire thing, none of this was transferred through TDP. In fact, there are small hints that you could pick up on it that show you it's got more of a lineage from the Type 2 AKs. So the earlier AK, Type 2 and Type 3 AKs. I mean, look at where the sling swivel is. This resembles more of the early AK rather than the later one where the sling swivel goes onto the handguard retainer. The story goes that some Soviet defectors who crossed the line with their early Type 2 or Type 3 AKs had surrendered them to the Yugoslavs. And the Yugoslavs, of course, generously had taken them in along with their brand new armament. And from there, they started developing the Type 64, or the early Yugo AKs that you would see. I think it's pre-Type 64, quite frankly. Let us know in the comments section below if you've heard of this story. But that's the word on the street. And I find no reason not to believe it, because some of the early parts actually are drop-in. You could drop them into early Yugo AKs from the Type 2 or Type 3 AKs. So very, very interesting how that happened. Of course, the M70AB2 was a couple generations down the road. Of course, at this point, you've got grenade launchers, night sights that they've added to it. You've got the threaded brake in the front. All of those things were later addition. But the original story, the origin story, comes from them pirating this design from the Soviets or the Russians. Cool stuff. But as I throw the name of the M70AB2, and this is a lovely vintage of 1982, we ought to mention some of the original, some of the earlier Yugos. So you had the Yugo M64s and then the Yugo M70s. And people don't realize, and a lot of times when you talk about Yugo M70s, you automatically think about something like this. Stamped receiver, AKM type. The original ones, Josh, the M70 and M70As, and technically M70A1, I believe, where they added the night sights, they have bolt hold opens. They put a bolt hold open on their original Kalash copies. But it ended up being... Ian has a really good video, actually, showing how one works. And it's not a bolt hold open like the magazine holds the bolt the bolt open, and then when you pull the magazine out, the follower releases it. It actually holds it open like... What's a fake Romanian Dragunov? PSL. It's like a PSL, like it actually holds the bolt open. But
shots fired at the PSL.
Interesting thing on that, the Yugo and the PSL are, you could say that they're brothers. They're brothers from that era of unlicensed copies. Because the M76, of course, shares roots with the PSL program. It was jointly developed. But on this, initially, these things were copied, and of course, these were issued with the original deployment idea that this was a submachine gun. Like the Kalashnikovs were first listed as a submachine gun. Yep. And so you saw a lot of these folding stocks. Specifically, I wanted an AB2 because all Yugo war crimes, you saw a lot of the folding stock Yugos out there because these were seen as the submachine guns of that era, to issue to your shock troops, your paras, and stuff like that. And so the Yugos, after a couple iterations, I'll put the actual date down here on when the most voluminous AB2s came out. So this is the predecessor of what you see like the modern Zastava NPAPs and PAPs or Pap smear rifles that they currently make.
Did you just say that? I thought you did. I thought you said that. Proceed.
But so this would be the base model that generated that. You'll see that they have flip-up night sights. I believe the modern ones do not have the night sights. But the night sights were added. Interesting thing, this was the era when they also liked to put tritium into their optics, and you saw a lot of radioactive tritium and glowing things that they like to use. That were added to these rifles. And of course, they all wanted to have these rifles to be grenade launching capable. So all you had to do was spin off your muzzle device, which this is a very, very loose, squishy, rattly muzzle device that we shot that course with a grenade spigot, stick a grenade in the front, and you flip open your grenade launching sight, which also cuts the gas off at the same time. And you're able to have your infantry launch grenades. You'll see that there is a dust cover removal button, because when they started launching grenades with the earlier ones, they started realizing, oh, that's a lot of power to the bulk carrier. And so they needed to lock the dust cover in. And also to further assist that was really interesting of a design mechanism. And Miles Vining had been showing a couple guys this, really neat. If you have the dust cover safety flipped up, and you were to rack, if you had a round that was chambered, sorry, I'm having troubles here. If you had a round that was chambered, there is no round chambered. And you kept the safety up, and you were to rack it, it would eject the cartridge, and you could pop a grenade launching cartridge without stripping a new round from the magazine. And then you went to launch the grenade. So the Yugo was designed with a lot of purpose and engineering small traits behind it that was intended to be a product improvement of the AKM. They didn't care to take the AKM and purely rip it off. No. They wanted to product improve it. And you'll see in a lot of the machining on this, for like 1970s, Yugoslavia had always made decent firearms. It should not be seen as a third world manufacturing when it came to small arms. A lot of these parts, you'll see it's nicely polished, beautifully blued. The craftsmanship on these things is actually quite nice. Mm-hmm. Now, Yugoslavia politically isolated itself from much of the world. So part of that trade-off is that you don't have as easy of a free trade with people. And so they didn't have any chromium ores in Yugoslavia. And so most of these barrels, all of these barrels, none of these barrels are chrome lined. And yet they shot highly corrosive Yugoslavian ammunition out of them. This one, and the reason I really, really emphasize that Apex is freaking awesome for bringing some of these in, I don't know how they found it. Some of these Apex kits have virgin bores inside of them. Like this one looked like it had not been shot by anyone. And the bore inside was clean, absolutely clean. Zero corrosion. And so that's a downside of buying some of the Yugo kits. Yes, the bore may be included in some of these kits, but it would be corroded out. So a little bit on the Yugo barrel. Now, I didn't do a good job talking about the legendary barrel from this era of Zastava manufacturing. These barrels are incredibly hard. The steel is very, very good. It's some Slovenian blend cannon steel. And it is so hard that, especially one of my friends who did demill work in Afghanistan and Iraq, where they would demill unserviceable AKs, they would try to drill holes into the barrel to mark barrels that you shouldn't use because they were out of spec. No issues with the Chinese, the Russian, the Soviet type of AKs. But when it came to Yugos, these things habitually were difficult to drill through or they would break bits. And it's because of that legendary cannon steel. And you may make fun of them saying, oh, well, you don't have any chrome lining. Back then, if you were to come back into formation and fail inspection because your barrel was a sewer pipe, you would actually get punished for destroying property of the state. Unfortunately, later on during the Yugoslav wars, after the breakup of Yugoslavia and there were a lot of warring factions, of course, discipline went awry. I mean, nobody really held people accountable for destroying state property because there was no state of Yugoslavia. But yeah, this barrel, if you can get an original Yugoslavian made, especially if it's a virgin barrel like this, that is what you want. And so when we're looking at wanting to take one of these on the practical accuracy course, that was one of my big considerations. I needed one with a pretty decent minty bore in order to actually see
the performance that we would expect from the factory. And so, yeah, I mean, they did good.
Yeah, well, and let's talk about that performance for a minute, because granted, the weather was cooperative with us as compared to sometimes, and we had a very low wind day. You can see it just by watching the trace of the rounds go out. Even at those extended distances, there's very little drift in the windage. But even with that said, just a couple miles an hour of wind, a small little gust here or there, and you do get that left to right shift, which was the cause of at least a handful of the misses on the course. But overall, I mean, performed exceptionally well for a 7.62 by 39 rifle.
I mean, for 20 rounds to complete the course, it beat the VZ58, which was, up until this point, kind of the undisputed king of accuracy for 7.6239.
Yep.
But I suspect maybe a little bit of lady luck was sprinkled upon this rifle for making its way back from this kind of treatment with a virgin bore. I don't know. Maybe the Yugo gods of wars had blessed this with luck, because after we cleared the 2 clearing shots, I missed it 5 times.
Yeah,
they were all
right.
in the area. They were all in the area. Don't get me wrong. They were all if you were standing there, if there was a person there, because these are reduced C zones, that person would not be having a great day.
No, yeah, either would have been tagged in the peripheral areas or would have had a very loud whip crack come right past them.
So as far as a 7.6239, a product improved AKM, 1980s era barrel, iron sights, standard sight
pretty
length.
good. Pretty
darn
good.
The worst stock you could find.
Well, and let's talk
target
about
with.
that really quick, Henry. Let's talk about the stock really quick before we wrap this up, because this is the first underfolder, if I recall correctly, that we've brought on the show, right?
Yeah.
How was I mean, you didn't shoot it collapsed, so shame. But you shot it in the fully extended position. But talk us through, is it too dissimilar from shooting, I don't know, sort of like a PDW style, wire stock style setup?
It's different. It's not as bad as people would say, but there's a reason why the underfolder style of stock really got phased out in the 60s and the 70s. Even though this was a 1980s rifle with a 1970s data package, you'll see a lot of the actual developed rifles from the 70s onwards. They favored the East German styled side folding stock. Or the VZ58s had the single spoke side folding stock. I mean, there's a reason that was favored. With this, if you didn't, one thing that the Yugos also updated was the safety. You can select it with a larger tab, and you could activate it even with the stock folded, which the Russian the underfolding AKMs, you could not access the safety very easily. So it was most certainly not nearly as easy to shoot as the fixed stock, for sure. Absolutely for sure. But is it as,
Not nearly as bad as people say then, yeah?
No, it's fine, especially in the wintertime when you have a lot of padding supporting you. Well, if you're wearing... There may be a reason why Yugos like to strut around with these big padded fur collar coats back then, eh?
So one other question for me. So the Yugos are fairly well known for having a chrome or a stainless bolt carrier, right?
It's not stainless. It's unfinished.
Well, what is it?
It's in the white. It's in the white.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah. Well, it will rust. In fact, it's got a little bit of spot rust on it, but
So what was do you know what the rationale is behind that? Because I know that rifle specifically, that one, and is it the Norinkos, the Type 56s that have the
white bolts? Yeah.
Yeah.
The Norinkos are the same.
So what's the rationale behind that?
That's a good question. I'll look that up and I'll plug it into the video as we do post-production.
Well, and if Henry can't find it, I would open to any of the audience members who know the super secret reason to go ahead and drop it into the comments section.
Yeah.
As to why not finish the bulk carrier.
Yeah, but I think one thing that it is interesting for the Yugos to have done this is that as they eliminated the bolt hold open, they did not want to entirely eliminate the function for the bolt to be held back on the last round. And so they did make their magazines to have have a tab to stop the bolt from closing all the way. So, you know, you wouldn't, as a soldier, you wouldn't know that you're entirely out of ammunition. I think the 70s and the 80s was certainly not the era that they really gave the Magpul dynamic carbine much of any consideration. They didn't have to flick their magazines out or anything like that. I think to them, the fact that you knew that your weapon was out of ammunition, you quickly changed the ammunition, that was more important. And to that note, if you did change the mag the doctrinal way, which would be that in Iraq. Now, I know some of you guys are going to get upset because I said that is the prescribed reload. Technically, no, but so what I just did was the Iraqi reload, right? You hold the bolts back, load a new mag, and then you slam forward. Of course, this is a bolt hold open magazine. But consider that Iraqi Tabuk AKs were put together by Yugo. Now, what is the actual doctrinal loading method then? AKs, and this is something interesting because nowadays we have a lot of people preaching this, loading from underneath. Some people from overseas actually say this has been some form of Western influence because the doctrinal way of loading an AK for infantry grunts back then, everything was done with your right hand. When your AK was down at a ready position, and you raise it up, typically they were in condition 3, you would of course have your safety on, raise it up, everything was done with your right hand, and you would straight go into shooting. Condition 3 means that there is no cartridge in the chamber. So you would make ready, disengage the safety, and charge it at the same time, and then you would start firing. I know that goes against what some people think, that you're supposed to do everything with your non-firing hand, but that is how it was back in the day. Everything was done with your right hand. Anyways, let's get back to it. You wouldn't run into the issue where your magazine would be dragging on the way out from the bolt hold open. But these really, they don't drag too much compared to the civilian modification ones. And you could see, this is what it looks like. It's just, the tab just, I don't know if you could see it, the tab just stops the bolt from going forward. It doesn't drag as badly as some of the aftermarket AKM followers do, as Josh has experienced some of those in the past when I was trying them out.
Yeah, it makes stripping the mag kind of a pain.
Oh, that was slow. I did not expect it to lock back.
Yeah, but, you know, when you're with all your other homies that are packing the war crime, you know, you've got your boys watching you while you change the magazine out, and then you throw your cigarette into the gasoline while you light everything on fire, and then you chase Owen Wilson down.
Yes. Yes. All right, and so, guys, there you have it. A rifle straight out of the 80s.
1990s Sarajevo, you mean?
Oh, yes. Again, thanks to Apex, thanks to Zach over at Brandon Herrera's shop for making this one possible. A really cool rifle to bring on the show. And if you are still watching here now, you guys are the coolest Kalashnikovs. Thank you very much. And of course, do all the good YouTube things. Like, comment, subscribe, share the video with your friends. Check us out on Patreon. Until next time, we'll see you on the range.
Dude, I've got friends overseas who have been inviting me to go drink Yugoslavian, well, not Yugoslavian, former Yugoslavian moonshine with them in Skopje.
This is Steel Knight 6, 4 Vic, 8 packs, REDCON 1, green to green. How copy, over?
Steel Knight 6, this is 716, roger, over. 1-6, Steel Knight 1, 1 pack, green, green, over. This is 716, roger, over.
1-6, Steel Knight 2, 1 Victor, 2 packs, REDCON 1, over.